try this again. Sorry, y'all. It's early. It's early for your boy. It's early for your boy. All right. So, welcome to Quality Time here at the Black Book Club. We're starting a little earlier today because we are actually having the pleasure of interviewing authors from Cape Town, Africa, who wrote a new ebook called Black Women Shaping the World. So we are able to speak with them today. We're going to talk to them about the ebook, a lot of the inspiration behind the book, and of course, what the research was like putting the book together. So, of course, we always start each Black Book Club the same way, where we speak about what book I'm reading right now. And the book I'm reading currently is The Whiteness of Wealth, How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It by Dorothy A. Brown. I started the book in the middle of January, and I'm at 190. I think there's about 225 pages. So hopefully I can finish this today. This is really an amazing book. It speaks about, Black economics, which is something I've been researching lately. And the biggest takeaway that I have from The Whiteness of Wealth by Dorothy Brown is that a lot of the, racial wealth gap that we all hear about and, listen to is just really not our fault. Growing up, we're always taught that the reason for the racial wealth gap is, Black people buy Jordans, or, we spend money on a car or something like that. And the biggest takeaway is that they said financial literacy actually accounts for less than 10%, I think it's less than 5% of the racial wealth gap in America, so in the world. And so, they speak about how every tax policy that's ever been changed in America is due to a wealthy white person suing the government. And so if the law or the policy has been established to answer to a wealthy white person suing the government, then of course that tax law is to benefit the person who sued, right? So it just speaks about how the policies since the beginning of time have been to keep us in a cycle of poverty, and how it's set up to really run on its own to perpetuate a cycle of us having to start over from zero with every generation. With we as Black people, we're not left the same amount of inheritance as a lot of other races. So we're having to start either at zero, or some having to start at from a negative standpoint and then try to gain wealth. This book said that the percentage of Black families that are born in middle class, the likelihood is that they will fall below that middle class structure in the next generation rather than go up. And that is due to a lot of the systemic racial, racist policies that are in place, whether it be corporate America or it be any other institution. So this is a great book. Hopefully I can finish this today and start on reading something else. I don't know what I'll read next, but an amazing book. So we can go ahead and get started. I see that we have some of the people here with us. Again, it's Black Women Shaping the World, is the book that we're talking about. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, are you getting me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
How are you
I'm
today?
doing fine. You?
I'm good. I'm good. It's 10. It's about 10 o'clock here, so just waking up to a good day.
Great. I'm facing a bit issue with my video, with my cam. Okay, I've seen. Okay, great. I think it's good now.
All right, perfect.
Yes. Happy to see you.
I'm happy to see. I'm happy to have you here with us today.
Okay, great. I think the other co-author are trying to get connected. Uh, Kawala and Alice Malonte. I'm sure that they will be soon in.
Okay. Yeah. Once they get connected, they can just put a request in, and I can get them added. No problem.
Great, great.
All right.
I'm just crossing the finger that the network was not disturbed.
Yeah, I'm kind of used to that. Whenever I have an interview, somebody's network gets messed up, either mine or the author's. So I don't want to say
Yes.
it's intentional, but I'm noticing a pattern.
Finger across.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm,
So
great.
if you want to, kind of introduce yourself to everybody as we wait, that'd be great. We're having a little connection issue. That's no problem. Let's see what we can do here. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, we can get it back in a second. In the meantime, I have a lot of books that I've recently put here in the Black Book Club. So I'm trying to get to them. You know what I mean? I have books like Stokely Speaks. It's a book that I want to read really soon. I want to read some good fiction. Daddy Cool by Donald Goins. I remember a song years ago by Guru featuring Jadakiss. He said, "My knife game like Daddy Cool," and that made me buy the book. To be honest with you, also have Black Enterprise Guide to Starting Your Own Business. This is really like a step-by-step guide on everything that you need. And as we try to account for the racial wealth gap, we try to establish as many businesses as we can so that we can kind of control our own destiny, right? So we want to set it up the right way. That's the most important thing, is setting everything up the right way. So I want to read this book just so I can make sure that I'm having, if I don't have things in the right place, I can put them in the right place. Also, Psychology of Hatred and Self-Defeat by Amos Wilson is a book that I want to get to. Just, speaks about the conditions that we're in. I always see posts where they say, I saw a post today when it's like, how can we expect the police killing to stop if we're hurting ourselves? And that's just such a false equivalence to me, because the people, the victims of police violence, they have no history of violent attacks to anybody else. So blaming us for being attacked is nonsensical. But of course, there is some accountability that needs to be placed for horizontal violence in our community. But in order to have accountability, you have to understand the root cause, right? You have to understand the psychology behind it. So I want to read this Amos Wilson book just to further understand where we are as a community. Also, I've been asked to put together some books to respond to the latest attack on Black literacy, to respond, for the children, what books I would suggest for kids that are in school. So I've put together a list here that I'll be speaking about soon. Books like Bronx Masquerade by Nikki Grimes, MC Higgins the Great by Virginia Hamilton is a great fiction book. Another Virginia Hamilton, she's an amazing children's fiction author. The House of Dreer it's not a scary book. It looks like it, but it's not a scary book. It's for children. It's a great book. Ninth Ward by Jewel Parker Rhodes is another great kids book. Then we have Christopher Paul Curtis here with The Watsons Go to Birmingham. great children's book, and a local author here in Huntsville, Alabama, Julian B. Waddle, is Tales from the Greenwood District. The reason why I say this is a great children's book, it's a fiction book based in nonfiction circumstances. So it is the peek into Black Wall Street before the massacre. I read this book, and what I pulled away from it was really profound, because when we look at the Black Wall Street massacre, myself, I can only speak for myself, but we're taught about it. I was taught about it as from a very macro sense, right? I was taught about it just about the event and the location. Of course, there were people there, but this book helps to individualize the actual attack. What I mean by that is he has different short stories about specific people. Now, these people are made up, but in my mind, it made it a little easier for me to picture this from an individual standpoint, that these were average, not quote unquote average, regular everyday people that were attacked in a military sponsored attack. You know what I mean? So, but this book is not as violent and dreary as that, because it's before the actual attack. So you're able just to look into the lives of people, right? It does not have that violent nature, of course, that we don't want to introduce to kids. So it gives you the sense of the ingenuity of the building of Black Wall Street and the life that was on Black Wall Street before the massacre. So it's not like I said, it's not a violent book. It's appropriate for children. I never want to really suggest books that are violent in nature to children. Also, Jewel Parker Rhodes with Sugar, another great children's book. Bud Not Buddy, a book that I read as a youth. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Like I said, I'll be putting together a video speaking about these books in particular. So I look forward to doing that. While we wait, does anybody want to? Yeah, these are just some of the kids' books that I will be suggesting that we can read. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so sorry. I just got out of a meeting. I'm very sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm happy you're here with us today.
Okay.
That's not a problem at all. If you don't mind, I'll just kind of introduce yourself to everybody.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Ka Wala. I am from Cameroon, even though I'm talking to you right now from Cape Town, South Africa. And I am one of the authors of Black Women Shaping the World that we're talking about today.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I wish I had the physical copy I could hold up, but right now it is an ebook that can be found on many sites, at Amazon, any platform that you're looking for.
Exactly.
So just kind of getting right into it, what was the initial inspiration that went into writing this book?
You know, we were actually preparing for a conference on women's leadership, and this was a conference that was being held in Washington, D.C., and we had specifically requested a panel on Black women. And as we prepared for this conference, it came to us that, you know, the stories of the women that we were preparing for this conference we're not very well known. We're not very well known by us as we prepared, and we're definitely not well known by others. And the other thing that struck us was the fact that we were talking about women leaders who in the 50s, who in the 60s, without internet, without email, had been able to reach across continents and really, play a key role in public life. And as we, came to that realization and we're starting to put all of this information together, we thought, you know what? We should write a book about this. And that's how it came to us. As Cameroonian women, it was tremendous to just take a look at women from across the world. In the book, there's the story of Cameroonian women, but also of South African women, of American women, of women from the Caribbean. And it just really struck us that we do not know our own history enough as Black women, and we definitely felt like, there was a story to be told there.
Yes, ma'am. And that's really what struck me first when I heard about the book, is that, I can only speak for myself, but whenever I'm taught about, our history, of course, it's always an independent standpoint because we're not really taught that much in school. But then it's really heavily gazed towards men, you know what I mean? And exactly. American men. All the stories that we hear about are from that perspective. And so seeing a book that speaks to a global impact of Black women really pulled me in instantly.
Yes. Yes. And that was really it. This conference, we were talking about the role that women need to play in this moment where our world is being reshaped. Our world is being reshaped in the big geopolitical fights between the United States, China, and Russia. Our world is being reshaped as, we don't have a choice anymore. We have to look at climate change. Our world is being reshaped as we realize the role that white supremacy has played, not only in the United States, but throughout Africa, because the colonial legacy is all about white supremacy. And the police, the police violence. It's so interesting that in the last case in the U.S., you're having a discussion about whether white supremacy can take place when there is no white person around. And when I hear that discussion, I think, come and visit us here in Africa and see how white supremacy plays without any white person around for decades, because we have police forces in Africa which are colonial forces and which still till today see their role and are trained in their role as being one to protect those who govern against the people. Just looking at the universality of these stories of these women and realizing that, because sometimes we say women are, we feel like, oh, there were also women there. Or, when we hear the story of one woman, we're like, oh, that's so exceptional. This woman was there. But when you read the book, you realize it's not exceptional. The women were there. It's just that the history has been told without them, but it wasn't exceptional that they were there. They were present. They were playing these roles at these very important moments in history. And women are still here playing very important roles as we make history now. And it's so important for the women today to know that, there's no question about their place. There's no question about whether they should be at the forefront of these global discussions and global change or not. It is their place.
Exactly. And as leaders too.
Exactly.
I know whenever we would hear about like Harriet Tubman, we would only hear about a very small part of Harriet Tubman's life. We wouldn't hear about she was in the military, she was a nurse, that she actively led these revolts against slavery. So
exactly.
the vantage point that we're given about Black women's history in the fight against colonialism is really skewed. And I think this book is great to try to post a balance from that skewed viewpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing, so, the book spans 80 years of history. So it's across time and across continents. And I think what was also just simply delightful for us to discover as we researched these women was how Pan-African their politics were. We're talking about women who first of all, I think few of us realize how linked the civil rights movement and the decolonization movements in Africa, how linked they were. And in the book, we talk about the fact that at the time of Ghanaian independence, Malcolm X was there. Martin Luther King was there. When the Black Star was flying in Ghana for the first time, Kwame Nkrumah had been trained in the United States. And so Kwame Nkrumah is one of the Pan-Africanist, but his Pan-Africanist view was heavily influenced by the fact that he had gone to school in the United States. When we looked at the fight against apartheid, we saw, Miriam Makeba and how she traveled across the world from South Africa to the United States and then got blacklisted in the United States after having been a darling, got blacklisted because she was so closely associated with the Black Panther movement and had to move back to Africa. So it's just really interesting. We live in times where going across continents is no big deal because we have, like we're doing now, we've got all of these gadgets. But, imagine doing this at a time when you had to travel by boat, one of the questions that we had in writing this book was to ask ourselves, well, are we sufficiently keeping up the legacy of combining these fights, of going across oceans? Are we sufficiently in touch with one another as we, fight against police brutality on whatever continent that we may be? And we were happy to see, for example, with the Black Lives Matter movement and the End SARS movement in Nigeria, how closely linked they were. And once again, these amazing women who came out in the United States, who came out in Nigeria, and who were basically the backbone of these movements.
Yes, ma'am. Now, like you said, this book spans such a large amount of time and it spans across oceans. How were you able to decide what to include, who to include, and kind of what to I don't want to say exclude, but just how did you decide what all to put in the book?
Put in the book. So I think number one, it was very hard. When we started, we felt a little overwhelmed. We were like, oh my gosh, there is so much information. There are so many women that could be included. So we made a decision and we said, well, we do want to demonstrate this, this cross period of history. So let's take major historical events. And, we saw the fight for independence in Africa and the civil rights movement in the United States and how connected those were. And then I cannot tell a lie. I am a graduate of Howard University and, was at Howard in 1994 with the with the anti-apartheid movement at the time, and so the apartheid period was just such a period where Black people came together across the world, and personally in my life, I had witnessed that moment in history, and then the EndSARS and Black Lives Matter movements were just, are the most recent moments in history. We wrote this book last year. We were already aware before writing the book that there was very strong connections between Black Lives Matter and EndSARS. And as we researched, we saw that the connections were even much stronger than we had thought and had imagined. So that was also just, we thought, let's select this moment that people have witnessed and they may not be aware that, I think people know that the Black Lives Matter movement was picked up by Black people all across the globe. And really became a moment of Black history. But I think people were not so aware that EndSARS that happened in Nigeria in October of that same year was supported by Nigerian Americans, that the Black Lives Matter movement wrote to the president of Nigeria when Nigerians were shot and were arrested due to police brutality. So we just, this was so real, and this was something that all of us, in this time have lived through. And, we just thought these are really key moments in Black history. And we know the history, but we don't know the women who were part of this.
Okay. And now, how long from inspiration to turning the book in? Like, how long was the research for a book like this?
So, of course, everything always takes much longer than you think it's going to take. We, especially because there were 3 of us working on it, we had given ourselves about a 3-month timeline. Okay. It ended up taking us close to a year. So the research took about 5 months, and then it took us another 4 months to write, to typeset. For all of us, this was our first book. So there were a lot of we were learning a lot of things, like how getting the copyrights to pictures of, to illustrate the book was not such a simple thing. If you look like Amy Ashford Garvey, she's in the book. She, we had pictures of her, but being able to get our hands on the copyright to have the permission to put it in the book was a very, very long process. And for some of the women, if when you buy the book, you will see that we actually had a very amazing Cameroonian woman artist who lives in France do some illustrations because we could not get the copyrights. And so, Ren Debussy, who is just an outstanding illustrator, was able to do the illustrations for us. So there again, we were able to really build bridges with women across oceans as we ourselves were writing the book.
And then and that's amazing that you were able to, like you said, build those connections to, we all have roadblocks, so you were able to get through those by thinking very swiftly and creating those connections.
Exactly. No, it was a really it was a wonderful part of our year last year writing this book. I think all of us discovered parts of ourselves. Of course, we were discovering the details of the history of these, amazing women. And it was, not only we were not only looking at their political lives, we were looking at their personal lives. We were looking, at, what they had gone through. I think a figure like Miriam Makeba is very well known, but reading again about, what she had gone through, being exiled from her own country, and finally having 11 countries that gave her passports, to welcome her, and how she took the fight against apartheid across the world through music, but very politically. It was really a moment of self-discovery for us, and as we reached out, to other women, they were always thrilled to just hear about these stories themselves, and to say, what can we do? How can we help? To put this book together.
So now, with it being three of you writing the book together, and it being everybody's first book, what were some of the experiences of putting this book together? Had you all known each other before deciding to work together?
Yes. So we know each other very well. We work together. We work together already professionally. So we were used to working in teams. So we're not always all three in the same team, but we were used to working in teams. But it was still the first time being able to, I think we had some challenges in being able to coordinate our schedules for the moments where we did work separately, but, being able to coordinate our schedules for the moments where all three of us needed to come together to make decisions about things and to be able to, determine, make choices about some of the things for the book. Again, the one thing I never thought would be such a big deal was the pictures. Deciding on the pictures together, which ones, we all liked, and which ones we thought best portrayed the situation. And then, of course, once we decided on that one, then we couldn't get the copyright for it. But, so those kinds of details were really quite interesting, but also really, I think, helped us. So we all work together professionally, but we're all activists as well.
Okay.
Two of us are political activists, and one of us is, a feminist activist. So it was also very interesting from the different perspectives, what we wanted to focus on with regard to these women, and how it impacted us in our activism, in our lives. I think all three of us were really strengthened by the process of writing this book. I think we were strengthened individually, and we were strengthened as three women who work together regularly.
And that's great to be able to come together, teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. So being able to come together and put this book together is really and it's a testament to our ability, our community strength.
Yes, yes. And I think for me, so we are also very different in age. I'm going to be 58 at the end of this month. One of the Bergeline, I think, is in her early 40s, and Alice is in her late 20s. So it was also generationally very interesting for us on this. I think we also felt like, we were drawing from the different generations, and that we were learning from one another and getting different types of energy from one another across the generations.
And that's really amazing, because I think that's what we need more of, is that generational unity. Being able to speak, like you said, to every generation, and having that strong voice independently and together.
Thank you to the person who says I look 27. Thank you.
They say black don't crack, so of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was one of your personal favorite memories of just putting the book together? One of your favorite experiences putting this book together?
The book tells 10 stories. And some of the stories are about individual women. Some of the stories are about groups of women. And being an activist myself, I knew a lot about a lot of these women. But I have to tell you that I have a little favorite as I was writing the book, who is Rinu Oduola. Rinu is a Nigerian woman activist who was very instrumental in the End SARS movement, and really at the forefront. Rinu is how a lot of us to know about End SARS. She was on the streets, she was online, and my social media that I use most of the time is Twitter. She was on Twitter, and she was just outstanding in being at the front of the protest and recording back and helping. It felt like she was all over the place in this protest of tens of thousands of people who were out. And at the time she was 23. And I was like, whose child is this? After that, I got to meet Rinu online. We've never met in person, but we're very, very, we have a strong relationship now online, and we've done a lot of things. And reached across to support one another in our activism. And I don't think that I would have felt that closeness to her. I don't think I would have felt the need to tell her story, which I have done, since we wrote the book. I've had the opportunity to tell her story multiple times. That has just been a really fantastic moment for me. I think it's also when you're older and you've been an activist for most of your life, it's also wonderful to see young people who are so engaged and who are leading, who are at the forefront of movement. It gives such extraordinary hope, to know that people are working on these issues, and also that they are linked, across countries and across continents. So for me, that Rinu is my little favorite in the book, and she's very much at the beginning of her story. I think she's like 28 now, and it's just going to be a delight to continue to watch her as a woman leader just grow. And I think she's one of the most exciting people on our continent right now. And so it's wonderful to write about somebody and then to know them, So, yeah.
And I've never heard of that name, so I can't wait to fully read the book. I can introduce myself to
it. Exactly.
And I think that's one of the biggest surprises that I've had in my research about, Black liberation movements is how young these people were.
Yes.
How young they are. They started so young. I remember I read Revolutionary Suicide, and he was a teenager when he first started to put together the Black Book Club, and he spoke about how these young Black women and men were 20, 21, 19, and they were already coming in with this sense of urgency and this sense of pride in putting together what they needed to fight against the systemic structure that were going on. And they just had such a sense of intelligence that is amazing to me. I remember, I think Elaine Brown was 15, 16 when she first started to do a lot of the groundwork to become a leader. So it's really amazing that they're so young and so intelligent. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think it's a strong testament to leadership that we have a tendency to forget that so many of the leaders that we look up to who have done extraordinary things in terms of making great strides in liberation were very young. And somehow when we begin then to govern countries, we shut out those young voices. We shut out those voices that are idealistic. We need people to be idealistic. We need the people who, believe that they can make change and believe in a better world and are ready to invest the energy and strengthen it. And I think that's a very good, strong reminder to us. Another favorite story of mine in the book is, of course, the story of UDFEC, which is the union, the Democratic Union of Cameroonian Women who fought for independence. And since I'm Cameroonian, that story, of course, speaks to me. And there again, you see young women who are 18 years old, who are 21, and who fought on all fronts, who fought politically, but who went to Russia to learn how to fly airplanes so that they could lead the armed fight. Who were carrying guns across borders in their kabas. In Cameroon, we have a very it's a very big wide dress called the kaba, and it's of course very convenient to hide something in it if you are in a revolution and you're trying to get some things across across enemy lines. So the stories of the women of UDFEC is another favorite of mine. Story that I definitely knew before we started writing the book. I knew very well. But still, writing it down, I think that part of writing the book was also so wonderful. Knowing that we are contributing to putting this history down on paper for other generations, for other people, for young people. The book is a very easy to read book. It's a short book. It's very simple. We want to make this as accessible as possible. We want as many people as possible to pick it up, to read it. And, as we say at the end of the book, we're hoping that this is a springboard for people. We're hoping that people read this book and go, wow, I got to know more. I got to find out more of these kinds of stories. I've got to find out more about the role of Black women in history. I've got to find out more about, Black women in all of these movements. So yes, the book is available on Amazon, and I hope Desiree is on and she can just put the link in the comments.
Yes, it's available on Amazon for ebook right now, right? I'm right. Yeah. So I know you said that you wanted to make the book, accessible to everybody. So you wanted to kind of keep it short so that people can really introduce a thorough introduction to some of these great Black women leaders. How were you able to cut the length of the book down? Because these people have so full lives. Like, how were you able to say, okay, this is where we have to stop?
Exactly. The first thing we did was give ourselves a page limit. And we said, no more than 3 pages about one leader. So we gave ourselves a page limit, and then we really went, because our book is focused on across continents. So we focused on the part of the story of that leader, which is where they crossed continents. Like you say, these are people whom 300-page books are written about one of them. So we went to what is that moment when they reached across the ocean, when they took their activism beyond their local area and went and either were active in another space or joined with other activists. And the title of the book is Black Women Shaping the World Across Continents and Across Time.
All right. And so I know the book hasn't been out very long, but what has some of the early feedback been like about the book?
We've really gotten very positive feedback from all kinds of audiences. So we've gotten positive feedback definitely from the women's activist community. I have been thrilled to see the book out. We were very happy to get positive feedback from university professors who felt like it's a great introduction book that will help young people get into the history without feeling like they have to read a boring history book. So we've gotten very good feedback from there. Like I said, we've interviewed some of the women because a good number of the women are alive, especially in the Black Lives Matter and the End SARS moment, who have been very happy to have been interviewed and to see the book come out that's telling some of their stories. It's interesting, I think it is a characteristic more of women than men, in that women like to do, and they're not necessarily looking for the limelight. Some of the women in the book would not have sought for their stories to be told. So we had to kind of seek them out, and some of them were not so sure about being in the limelight. They said, we kind of did our thing behind the scenes. That's where we want to remain. We are not, we're not people who are out in front. And we were very, we worked with them to tell them that's precisely the story we want to tell. We want to tell the story of the fact that, you know, sure, you have, you know, people who are leading the movement and who are out in front and who are, you know, everybody knows their name and everybody knows who they are, but you also have people who are behind the scenes and who play an extremely important role. And those people who are out in front cannot be there if there are not people behind the scenes. So it's very important for us to tell the story of the people who are behind the scenes because, you know, people are different. And when they look at what can I do, how can I get involved, they have to know that there are roles in every movement that fit every kind of personality. There's room for everybody in a movement. And so telling the stories of those who, you know, are in the background is also extremely important. And some of the stories, some of the women in the book are extremely well known, but others not so much. And I think that that was also very, very important for us to let people know.
Yes, and the link to purchase the book on Amazon is pinned to the live right now, so you can click that and go right to it. And,
Great.
came right on time with that. So now, with you being, you know, have gone to an HBCU, and also the conference that you spoke about was in DC, how do you feel about the current, I would say, attack on Black literacy that is going on in America? Like, how do you all look at that, and does it mirror what's happening in your home as well, and how do you feel about it?
Woo! You all have lost your minds in America. I'm so sorry to say that, but I tell you, you are not in a good place in America. You know, I think it is just so absurd that that people don't want to teach history. I mean, you know, there's some things about America where you will just scratch your head and like, what are they doing now? They don't want to learn their own story. What you know, what is this about? It's so bad that people who have access to information, people who have access to books and to write books and would choose to, you know, block access to that knowledge and information for their children. It is such a sad statement on those people. And you have to wonder, you know, what form of madness is this? What form of weakness is this? How would, you know, being a human being is part of being a human being is knowing what you have done in the past, both the good and the bad, learning from it and growing, right? This is just being human. And the fact that people would choose not to know, would choose not to learn, would choose not to grow, is such a sad statement on American society right now. And unfortunately, you know, the period that you are going through as a country that is often looked up to and thought to be in advance with regard to many things. What that means for countries like mine, Cameroon, which is still a dictatorship. Cameroon, we have the same president for the last 40 years. And one of the things that is really wrong with our society is that we do not know our history. And know, this is the reality of colonized peoples, is that our history was taken from us, and we were denied the ability to write our history, to record our history, to tell our history. So it's very, very sad for those of us who are living in societies where we are just beginning to write, where we are just beginning to go back and to know, and where that space is still not very open. It's so sad to see America, you know, seemingly going, I don't know, I have difficulty finding the words to describe this kind of backwardness that we see in the United States today. I think it's such a sad statement on a significant part of your society that they would feel so threatened by truth. What kind of human being feels threatened by truth? And truth that is in the past. It's yeah.
Like you said, we've lost our mind. I mean, it's so much worse than what's being reported.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're seeing completely empty libraries.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're empty is because they're being cleaned out. I mean, they're being treated like criminals. You know, teachers being threatened with felonies if they carry books that speak to, like you said, historical truth. It's not like these things are made up. This is what happened. And in my opinion, it's an attempt to keep it going. So if we don't know what happened before, we can't properly prepare ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's really bad. I mean, soon they'll be yanking books out of people's hands really soon if things don't change.
Yeah. And I think it's extremely sad that you know, this minority of people is impacting the entire country, right? Because instead of learning about your history, instead of, you know, acknowledging certain truths and confronting certain truths, and every country, every society, there is no group of humans who do not have ugly things about their history. But like I said, the journey of being human is to take a look at those things, learn from them, and grow, and, you know, try to become a better society. And you seem to have in the United States people who are so who so want to maintain the status quo, who so want to who are so racist, so obsessed with, you know, keeping people of another race, you know, economically apart, politically apart, in terms of their fundamental human rights apart, in terms of their lives apart. They're so obsessed with that they will pull themselves down, because, you know, they are the biggest losers. I mean, Black people in America have demonstrated their ability to resist and rise above, right? They have, you know, historically been able to come through atrocity and shine, and you know, and rise above. And so these people who don't want to learn are keeping themselves down, are refusing to grow as humans, and it's very it's perplexing. I tell you, it's perplexing. It's such a sad statement, and you also feel like at this moment in time in history where, you know, we are hit by the environment with floods and droughts and fires and so on. We have issues of war around the world, and this is what you're worried about? You people in America, you know, you people in America have a serious gun problem with that. You have to figure out how to get guns out of your society so that you're not killing children every day and shooting up schools and supermarkets and so on. There are so many real problems in the world that the fact that people would choose, to maintain or to attempt to maintain, because I don't think they can succeed, but to attempt to maintain racism as a pillar of their world view, yeah. You're torn between outrage and then feeling really, really sorry for these human beings.
Yeah, and that's really, and that's, you summed it up perfect. Like, that's really where I'm at, where just you're outraged 12 hours of the day, and you're just really, you're ashamed some of the hours, and then you are frightened, and you're, like you said, you feel sorry for what's going to happen next. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like you said, we have a gun problem. We have so many mass shootings that it's not even front page on the news anymore. Mm-hmm. And this is what we're having meetings about, is banning non-fiction books in schools. Not banning guns, but banning books. And we're having police presence in libraries. We're not having them in actual crime areas. We're having it in libraries. And we're talking about, we have a teacher shortage in America, a very bad teacher shortage. And they're talking about charging teachers with felonies. And it's like, are we living in two different worlds where the things that we really need to worry about are not being addressed? We're talking about giving teachers felonies. So we're going to lose more teachers. We don't have enough now. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's bad business. But we have great books like Black Women Shaping the World that we can just really kind of, we have to do self-research. We have to be able to teach ourselves a lot of these philosophies and relate to these leaders so that we can see the leaders of tomorrow in a lot of these young women and men that can take inspiration from it, and then they can push the ball further up the proverbial court to try to get a semblance of balance that we need.
Absolutely. And I think really, it's interesting as we wrote the book that of course young women are, very drawn to it. And we kept, and we'll continue, and I'm very happy to do this interview with you, that, men need to read the book. Men need to know these stories. Young men, older men, really need to read the book and to realize that every single fight that we have fought and made any form of progress on has been fought by both women and men, and that as a society, as a people, we succeed when we work together as women and men, towards advancing any forms of rights and freedoms and liberties in our society. So the book is a story about women, but it's definitely a story that both women and men need to read.
Definitely, yeah. Because any attempt to separate is to slow us down, right?
Exactly.
So any attempt to separate the man and woman is an attempt to isolate so that they can slow the progress down. Because like you said, any advancement we've ever made has been pushed towards by women and men together, pushing the same direction.
Exactly. 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 And you know, the fundamental respect for one another is based on that knowledge of equality, of our equal ability to lead, of our equal ability you know, to be able to fight for these freedoms, and of our equal rights to these freedoms. You know, I think that if we look at liberation movements, whether it's on the continent of Africa or you know, in the United States and other, you know, Black communities, we have had those moments in history where we have made progress, but where women's rights have been not have not moved along with the other rights, you know. So I think we need to be conscious of that, and that as in this moment, as we fight for rights, as we fight police brutality, as we fight for our lives, that we are very conscious that we are talking about the lives of Black women and the lives of Black men.
Yes, ma'am. I remember, you know, reading A Taste of Power, and Elaine Brown spoke about how she was trying to get Assata Shakur to join the Black Panther movement, and she was like, "There's too much sexism going on over there
Yes.
for me to join." And she spoke about how sometimes, and I've seen it where, you know, Black men will have a genuine care for Black women, but where the divider is they'll say, well, let's get let's get Black men's rights together first, and then we'll pull women up together when we get ourselves right.
Yeah.
And it's a separator, right? Because you're putting one group in a less category by you saying that this deserves the most attention right now. It's like, no, we all are being abused, so we all need to have shared attention, shared responsibility, shared accountability, so that we can go forward as a people. Because it's not, let's get one together we can pull up. It's we all have to pull each other up simultaneously so we can be a stronger force.
Exactly. And you know, the realization that, you know, rights are rights. You know, you can't put rights into boxes and separate them out and say, I'm going to do this first and do that one, you know, second. You rights are rights, and I think that, you know, all of us have to acknowledge that we live, and so we live in people their rights that have put people down, you know, into certain categories and made some groups lesser than others, and that white supremacy is a sexist movement as well as being a racist movement. So we have to acknowledge all of these elements of, you know, what has you know, constructed, what has been the construct of the societies that we live in. If we don't understand the full nature of that construct, we cannot dismantle it. And, you know, making sure that we're working together as men and women, you know, is fundamental to deconstructing white supremacy.
Yes, ma'am, it definitely is. It really, I can't stress that enough. So now with this book, you know, being out, are you planning on making physical copies of this book?
Yes. So, you know, we, like I said, we thought it would be easier than it was. So yes, we are planning to make physical copies, especially because for the African audience, the ebook remains not so accessible, and
okay.
It's important to us that Africans, you know, of all ages have access to the book. So we are planning to make physical copies for both the U.S. market and for the African market.
Okay. And do you have plans on writing another book? Like, are you looking to continue on the book writing path?
Yes, yes, yes. We have
Good.
we have 2 books already in the pipeline in this series. So we already set ourselves up because we decided to write a women's leadership series. And we have 2 books that we are already working on. One is a book about the women in Cameroon in the 1930s who were amongst the first to rise up against the colonizer, and these were market women, and they rose up against colonial power and paid for it very dearly. They were shot, some of them died, some of them were killed, and this is a part of Cameroonian history that very few Cameroonians know about, not to talk about the rest of the world. And we're going to do the Cameroon book so that Cameroonians know about that part of history. But in that same period of history, in that same moment, women rose up in Cameroon, in Togo, in Nigeria, and in Cote d'Ivoire. So there were 4 countries where women rose up. And this was, directly after the war. So the colonial countries were looking for more money. They were broke, and so they increased taxes across all of these countries. And the women who were selling in the markets rose up against the colonizer. And we want to tell this story. So that's actually 3 books. So it's the Cameroonian women we want to write, and then we want to tell this similar story across 4 African countries. And then we have a story right now. Like I told you, we live in a country where the same person has been president for 40 years. So we have people who are fighting for democracy and for justice right now. And one group is called the Mothers of the Nation. So it's an all-women's group that has taken amazing risks in the last few years in Cameroon, leading protests. They've gone to jail. They have amazing stories to tell. 2 of us, myself and Bergeline Dumou, who are authors of this book we're talking about today, are part of the Mothers of the Nation. And there, again, there's an amazing generational story to tell, because we have women there who are 70 and above and who are out marching in the streets. And we want to tell their story. We want to tell their story of this moment in our lives. So, yes, we've got our work cut out for us.
I love it. When you write those, I want you to come back and tell us more about them.
I absolutely will.
Perfect. Well, I know you said you just left one meeting and you jumped into this interview, so I won't hold you too long. I really appreciate this conversation and the book. I appreciate you all putting this book together. And like I said, I know I'm going to go ahead and finish the book very soon. It's not a long read. I just had to finish one before I could jump into another. But I'll finish the book very soon and speak in more totality about the reading of the book and how I enjoyed the book. I'll do that really soon. So I really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch very soon, and we can talk in some more detail.
Thank you. Thank you so much, first of all, for what you do. It's a wonderful forum to have the Black Book Club, and thank you for having us on. It's been a great conversation. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate everything. I appreciate you for joining us today.
Okay. Take care.
All right. I'll talk to you real soon.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Wow, that was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. First time that we were able to interview somebody internationally and to have such an in-depth conversation about this book, Black Women Shaping the World, which is an incredible work of art, and it's very important that we acknowledge putting the book together and everybody that's in the book. I was taking notes here because some of the names I had never heard of, so I'll be researching them very soon. Some of the organizations, I'll be reading into, because it's a global situation. It's a global fight that we're in. So being able to read about people from across oceans that have the same mindset and that are going about things the same ways that we are here, it gives us more strength. There's strength in numbers. So I appreciate the book. I appreciate all the authors that put it together. And we're going to talk more very soon. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I know it was a little early for us over here in Central Time, but thank you for spending your little breakfast with me today, or your brunch. So I really appreciate everybody joining me. Thank you for saying great job. I really appreciate that. So I will talk to you all very soon. Thank you again.